The message came on a Tuesday. After decades of sending signals into the void, humanity had almost given up hope of a response. Then, without warning, every radio telescope on Earth picked up the same transmission. It was clear, structured, and unmistakably artificial. James Miller was eating a sandwich in the NASA cafeteria when the alarm started blaring. As the lead communications specialist for the International Space Coalition, he was among the first to see the translated message. Greetings, people of Earth. We are the Galactic Concord, a union of civilized species. Your signals have reached our outer monitoring stations. We wish to establish formal contact. Within hours, governments worldwide scrambled to form a response team. James found himself appointed as humanity's primary diplomatic representative, not because he was the most qualified diplomat, but because he understood communication systems better than anyone else on the planet. "I'm an engineer, not a politician," James protested when told of his new role. "Exactly," said Director Patel, his boss. "They'll respect technical knowledge more than smooth talking. Besides, you think faster on your feet than anyone I know." 3 days later, a sleek silver ship appeared in Earth's orbit. It made no attempt to hide or use stealth. It simply arrived, positioning itself in full view of Earth's observation systems. The ship was unlike anything humans had built. Nearly a mile long, its hull flowed like liquid metal, with no visible seams or joints. It dwarfed the International Space Station, making humanity's greatest space achievement look like a child's toy by comparison. A shuttle detached from the main vessel and descended toward the designated landing site, a hastily prepared airfield outside of Geneva. World leaders, scientists, and military personnel gathered to witness humanity's first extraterrestrial visitors. James stood at the front of the welcoming committee, trying to control his breathing. The shuttle touched down without a sound, hovering momentarily before settling on the tarmac. A door slid open, revealing 3 figures. The aliens walked with a smooth grace despite their unusual appearance. Their leader stood nearly 7 feet tall, with iridescent blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. 4 arms emerged from a broad torso, and a crest of fin-like appendages crowned its head. "I am Admiral Dorax," the alien said, its voice surprisingly clear and understandable through what must have been some kind of translation device. "Chief Representative of the Galactic Concord Assessment Division." James stepped forward. "James Miller, representing Earth. We welcome you to our planet." Admiral Dorax's large, multifaceted eyes studied James carefully. "Your species has achieved much in a short time. However, we have concerns about your readiness to join the wider galactic community." The following days were filled with meetings, presentations, and tours of Earth's major facilities. The aliens were polite but clearly unimpressed by much of what they saw. During a tour of NASA's Spacecraft Development Center, Admiral Dorax examined the latest deep space vessel prototype with what James was beginning to recognize as disappointment. "This is your most advanced ship?" the Admiral asked, running a 3-fingered hand along the hull. "Yes," James replied. "It's designed to reach Mars in just 30 days. Admiral Dorax made a sound that might have been a sigh. "At such speeds, you would be unable to outrun even the slowest patrol vessels of the Void Swarm." "The Void Swarm?" James asked. "One of many threats that exist beyond your solar system," Dorax explained. "They consume worlds with insufficient defenses. This is why the Concord exists, mutual protection." That evening, in a private meeting with Earth's Security Council, the aliens were more direct. "Your planet possesses valuable resources and a strategic position," said Dorax, "but your fleet is virtually non-existent. We've focused our efforts on sustainable development and solving our own problems before expanding outward," explained the UN Secretary General. Admiral Dorax's fins flattened against his head. A gesture James had learned indicated skepticism. "Noble goals, but the galaxy does not reward the unprepared," said the Admiral. "The Concord can offer protection, but we must assess whether Earth would be a burden or an asset to our alliance." Later, James found himself alone with one of the alien delegation's junior members, an engineer named Krell. Unlike the others, Krell seemed genuinely curious about human technology. "Your power generation methods are unusual," Krell said as they examined a fusion research facility. "You've taken different paths than most species." "Necessity drives innovation," James replied. "We've had to work with limited resources." Krell's head tilted. "Yet you accomplish much with little. Our sensors detected over 2,000 satellites in orbit, but only a handful of actual vessels. Why build so many small devices instead of proper ships?" "Different purposes require different tools," James explained. "We network our systems together rather than building single large platforms." Krell seemed to consider this. "Interesting approach. Admiral Dorax will still be concerned about your defensive capabilities, however." "Why is the Concorde so focused on military strength?" James asked carefully. Krell's voice lowered. "Because we have seen what happens to worlds that cannot defend themselves. The Void Swarm has consumed 17 civilizations in the past century alone. The Concorde was formed after the third extinction." James felt a chill. "And you think Earth could be a target?" "All resource-rich worlds are targets," Krell replied. "And your planet has already been broadcasting its location for decades." That night, James couldn't sleep. He reviewed everything he'd learned about the Concorde. They seemed benevolent, but their obsession with fleet size and military power was troubling. If Earth wanted to join the galactic community, they would need to prove their worth. The following morning, James made a proposal to Director Patel. "They're judging us by their standards, not ours," he said. "We need to show them what humans can really do." "And how do you suggest we do that?" Patel asked. James smiled. "By playing to our strengths. If they want to see our fleet, let's show them something they've never imagined." Admiral Dorax watched from the observation deck as Earth rotated slowly below. His second-in-command approached with a data tablet. "Assessment results, Admiral. Their technology is at least a century behind Concorde standards. Their space vessels number fewer than 50, and none have weapons capable of repelling even a minor incursion." Dorax's fins rippled with concern. "They are so vulnerable, yet so unaware of the danger. They think their isolation protects them. Shall I prepare the protection proposal? The standard resource tribute in exchange for a defensive fleet?" Dorax considered for a moment. "Yes, but include additional cultural and technological assessments. There's something about these humans that troubles me. They lack proper ships, yet they've somehow survived and thrived. I want to understand how before we proceed." Little did the Admiral know, humanity was about to redefine what it meant to have a fleet. The Concorde assessment team arrived 1 week after Admiral Dorax's initial visit. 5 alien specialists, each an expert in different fields, transported down to Earth in a smaller shuttle that gleamed like polished obsidian under the morning sun. James Miller waited for them at the newly established Interspecies Coordination Center, a repurposed convention hall in Geneva. Beside him stood Tom Reed and Anna Wilson, Earth's top scientists in propulsion physics and materials engineering. "Remember," James whispered to his colleagues, "they're looking for weakness. Don't give them any." The lead assessor, a tall alien named Vex, stepped forward. Unlike Admiral Dorax, Vex's skin was a pale green with geometric patterns that seemed to shift as he moved. "We will begin our evaluation immediately," Vex announced without preamble. "First, we must inspect your orbital defenses." James exchanged glances with Tom. "Of course, we've prepared transport to our space elevator in Ecuador." Vex's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Space elevator. You have functioning gravity manipulation technology." "No," Anna replied. "We use carbon nanotube cables. Simple physics." The aliens conferred quietly among themselves. James caught the word primitive several times. "We will use our own transport," Vex decided. "It will be faster." The human delegation soon found themselves aboard the alien shuttle, rising through the atmosphere at a speed that made Earth's fastest rockets seem like bicycles. The curve of the planet appeared below them, blue and white, and breathtaking. "Your planet is quite beautiful," commented one of the aliens, a specialist named Mira who focused on resource assessment, "rich in water and biodiversity. Very appealing to the Void Swarm." "You keep mentioning this Void Swarm," Tom said. "What exactly are they?" Vex gestured toward a view screen, which flickered to life, showing something that resembled a massive cloud of metallic insects. "They are a collective consciousness that spreads across the galaxy. They consume worlds, strip mining them of all useful elements, and leaving lifeless husks behind." The humans watched in horror as the recording showed an orange-colored planet being swarmed, and then gradually turning gray as its resources were extracted. "This happened 3 standard cycles ago," Vex said. "The planet had minimal defenses, much like Earth." James felt a chill run down his spine. "And that's why you're so focused on our fleet capacity." "Precisely," Vex replied. "Now, please direct us to your primary defense vessels." The next few hours were uncomfortable. The assessment team visited the International Space Station, examined Earth's handful of military satellites, and reviewed plans for the Mars Defense Initiative, humanity's most ambitious space military project to date. With each inspection, the aliens' disappointment became more evident. "This is insufficient," Vex finally declared as they examined the blueprints for Earth's newest spacecraft, a vessel designed to intercept asteroids. This would not survive first contact with even a scout party from the Void Swarm. Tom Reed, who had been quiet for most of the tour, finally spoke up. "Perhaps you'd be interested in seeing our experimental propulsion lab." Vex seemed ready to dismiss the suggestion, but one of the other assessors, a technical specialist named Orion, raised a hand. "I would like to see this." At the Global Advanced Propulsion Laboratory in Switzerland, Tom led the group through security and into a massive underground facility. At the center of the main chamber sat what looked like a small metal sphere, about the size of a beach ball, surrounded by complex equipment. "What is this?" Orion asked, genuine curiosity in his voice for the first time. "We call it the gravity lens drive," Tom explained. "It creates a focused distortion in space-time, allowing for movement without traditional propulsion." "Impossible," Vex said flatly. "Your species does not have the mathematical knowledge for such technology." Tom smiled slightly. "Would you like a demonstration?" Before the aliens could respond, Tom activated a control panel. The sphere hummed softly, then vanished. A moment later, it reappeared on the other side of the room. The aliens fell silent. "How far can this device travel?" Orion asked finally. "Currently, we've tested it to the moon and back," Anna Wilson said, stepping forward. "But theoretically, there's no upper limit to the distance. The real challenge is precision targeting over longer jumps." "And how many vessels have you equipped with this technology?" Vex demanded. James interceded. "None yet. It's still experimental." Vex's skin patterns darkened. "So you have promising technology that you failed to implement in your defense systems. This confirms our concerns about your species' readiness." As they left the lab, Orion fell into step beside James. "Your approach is unusual. Most species develop standard fleet vessels before attempting such advanced physics. Humans tend to do things our own way," James replied. "Sometimes we skip steps. Skipping steps leads to vulnerability," Vex called from ahead of them. "The Concord protocols exist for a reason." Back at the Coordination Center, the assessment team prepared their formal report. James and his colleagues waited anxiously in an adjoining room. "They're not impressed," Anna said quietly, "no matter what we show them." Tom nodded. "They're judging us by their standards. Fleet size, ship tonnage, weapon yields. They're missing the bigger picture." "Which is?" James asked. "That humans have never approached space the way they do," Tom replied. "We network. We adapt. We find solutions that don't require brute force." The door opened, and Vex entered with the assessment team. He carried what looked like a crystal tablet. "We have completed our evaluation," Vex announced. "Earth's defensive capabilities are severely inadequate by Concord standards. You have promising theoretical research but no practical implementation. Your orbital assets are unshielded and vulnerable." James took a deep breath. "And your recommendation?" "The Concord is prepared to offer provisional membership and protection," Vex stated, "in exchange for resource rights and technology sharing." "What kind of resources?" Anna asked sharply. 20% of your planetary rare earth elements, 30% of your water ice from your polar regions, and mining rights to your lunar surface," Mira replied matter-of-factly. "Standard rates for protection of a pre-fleet civilization." Tom's face reddened. "That's a very generous offer," James cut in, giving Tom a warning glance. "We'll need to discuss this with our world leaders." "Of course," Vex said. "Admiral Dorax will return in 3 of your weeks to receive your answer. I suggest you use that time wisely to consider the alternative." After the aliens departed, James called an emergency meeting with Earth's Defense Council. "They think we're helpless," he told the assembled leaders. "They're offering protection in exchange for what amounts to colonization." "What choice do we have?" asked the Russian general. "You've seen what this void swarm can do." James looked at Tom and Anna. "We need to show them what humans can really do when our backs are against the wall. We need to think differently." "What are you suggesting?" Director Patil asked. James smiled grimly. "If they want to see a fleet, let's give them something they've never imagined." In orbit above Earth, a small probe from the Concord ship continued to monitor all transmissions. It recorded a sudden increase in global communications, emergency meetings of world governments, and the mobilization of scientific teams worldwide. Aboard the main vessel, Admiral Dorax reviewed the assessment report with concern. "They have potential," he mused, "but they lack the fundamental understanding of galactic threats." His second-in-command nodded. "The resource agreement is fair. Many worlds have accepted similar terms." "Perhaps," Dorax replied, watching Earth rotate slowly on the view screen. "But something about these humans troubles me. They keep surprising us. I wonder what they'll do next." 3 weeks passed in a flurry of global activity. In every major nation, scientists worked around the clock. Military bases buzzed with unusual movements. Satellite launches increased threefold. Small, seemingly insignificant devices that the Concord observers dismissed as primitive monitoring equipment. James Miller barely slept. Dark circles formed under his eyes as he coordinated between governments, scientists, and military leaders. The plan was ambitious, perhaps impossible, but it was Earth's best hope. Admiral Dorax's ship returned exactly on schedule, appearing suddenly in orbit like a silver needle against the black of space. This time, the Admiral brought a larger delegation, 20 senior Concord officials in 3 shuttles that descended toward the Geneva landing site. "They're showing off their fleet strength," Anna Wilson muttered as they watched the shuttles land in perfect formation. "Subtle intimidation tactics. Let them posture," Tom Reed replied. "It'll make what comes next even better." James straightened his tie. "Remember the plan. Stay calm, no matter what they say." Admiral Dorax emerged from the lead shuttle, his blue skin catching the sunlight. Behind him came Vex and several new aliens of different species, representatives from the Concord's governing council. "James Miller," Dorax said, inclining his head slightly, "we have reviewed the assessment report in detail and come to deliver the Concord's formal proposal." The meeting took place in the Grand Assembly Hall of the United Nations. Representatives from every Earth nation filled the chamber, facing the alien delegation across a wide table. A tall, insect-like alien named Counselor Xin stepped forward, mandibles clicking as she spoke through her translator. "The Galactic Concord has existed for 12,000 standard cycles," she began. "In that time, we have incorporated 317 worlds into our protective alliance. Each member contributes according to their abilities and receives protection according to their needs. Holographic displays activated around the room, showing images of various planets and space stations. These worlds once stood alone, as Earth does now. Sin continued. Many no longer exist. The images shifted to show barren, lifeless planets. The void swarm shows no mercy to the unprepared. The UN Secretary General leaned forward. We understand the threat, Counselor. What exactly are you proposing? Admiral Dorax took over. The Concorde will station a defensive fleet in your system, 12 capital ships and supporting vessels. In exchange, Earth will provide resources as outlined in our proposal, plus hosting rights for 3 Concorde bases on your planet and 5 in your orbital space. A murmur ran through the human delegation. And if we decline? Asked the Secretary General. Dorax's fins flattened against his head. The Concorde cannot force protection on any world. But understand this. The void swarm is approaching this sector. Our intelligence suggests that it will reach your system within 1 standard cycle, approximately 14 Earth months. Without Concorde protection, survival is unlikely. The room fell silent. James stood up. Admiral, Counselor, respected delegates, Earth appreciates the Concorde's concern for our safety. We request 3 days to discuss your proposal among our world leaders. 3 days is acceptable. Dorax agreed, though I must emphasize the urgency of your situation. After the aliens departed, the human delegation exploded into argument. This is extortion, shouted the representative from India. But what choice do we have? Countered the Brazilian delegate. You saw what happened to those other worlds. The resource demands would cripple our economies, added the European Union representative. And the bases on Earth. They're essentially asking for military occupation. The debate raged for hours, with no clear consensus emerging. Finally, James asked for silence. We have another option, he said quietly. Over the past 3 weeks, Tom Reed and Anna Wilson have been coordinating a global scientific effort. I believe they have something to show us. Tom activated a holographic display at the center of the room. The Concorde is judging us by their standards. Massive ships, conventional weapons. But that's never been humanity's strength. We adapt. We innovate. We find unexpected solutions. The display showed a network of satellites, thousands of them, far more than Earth currently had in orbit. This is our proposed planetary defense network, Anna explained. Using modified versions of Tom's gravity lens technology, we can create a shield around Earth that no conventional fleet could penetrate. How is this possible? Asked the Chinese representative. The technology is still experimental. It was, Tom said with a small smile. Until we had the motivation to perfect it. The equations work. The miniaturization is possible. We've successfully tested a prototype that protected a 10-kilometer area, and we can scale this up to protect an entire planet. The skepticism in the Secretary General's voice was clear. We can, Anna confirmed, but we'll need resources from every nation, and we'll need to repurpose most of our existing satellites. How long would this take? Asked the U.S. President. James looked grave. 3 months for the basic network. 6 for full coverage. The Concorde gives us 3 days to decide, reminded the Russian president. Then we give them an answer they don't expect, James replied. We tell them we need 3 months to prepare for their protection, while we actually build our own solution. The Secretary General looked troubled. You're suggesting we deceive the Concorde. I'm suggesting we buy time, James corrected. If our system works, we can negotiate as equals, not as suppliants. If it fails, their offer will still stand. After hours of further debate, the world leaders reached a consensus. They would pursue Earth's own defense system while delaying the Concorde. 3 days later, Admiral Dorax and the Concorde delegation returned for Earth's answer. The Secretary General addressed them formally. The nations of Earth have carefully considered your proposal. We are grateful for the Concorde's concern for our safety. Dorax's posture straightened, anticipating acceptance. However, the Secretary General continued, "We require 3 months to prepare our world for your protection. We must relocate certain facilities, adjust our resource production, and prepare our people for this significant change." Admiral Dorax's fins rippled with surprise. 3 months is an unusual request. The standard integration period is 1 week. Earth is not a standard world, James interjected smoothly. Our political systems require time for proper implementation. Surely the Concord, with its thousands of years of diplomatic experience, understands the need for cultural sensitivity. The Concord delegates conferred among themselves in low tones. Finally, Councillor Xin stepped forward. 3 months will be granted, but no more. The threat approaches, and the Concord fleet must establish defensive positions before the Void Swarm arrives. If Earth is not ready when we return, we cannot guarantee your safety. We understand, the Secretary General replied. Earth will be ready. After the aliens departed, James gathered with Tom and Anna in a secure room beneath the UN building. 3 months, Anna said, her voice tight with tension. Is it enough time? Tom ran a hand through his hair. It has to be. Every scientific mind on the planet is working on this. We've already launched the first test satellites. James looked at the global map on the wall, showing research centers lit up across every continent. Humanity has always done its best work under pressure. Now we just need to do the impossible. In orbit, Admiral Dorax watched Earth from his command deck. They're hiding something, he said to his second-in-command. The humans are planning something. Should we maintain surveillance? Dorax considered this. Increase monitoring. If they're building ships, we need to know. And if they're not building ships? Dorax's fins flattened in puzzlement. Then I cannot imagine what defense they think they're creating. Without a fleet, they are simply waiting to be consumed. Little did the Admiral know. The greatest fleet humanity would build wasn't ships at all, but something the Concord had never imagined possible. The next 3 months transformed Earth in ways no one could have predicted. Old rivalries between nations faded as humanity united against a common threat. Resources poured into the Planetary Defense Network project, codenamed SHIELD. James Miller set up headquarters in a repurposed aircraft hangar outside of London. World leaders had given him extraordinary authority to coordinate the global effort. Maps and screens covered the walls, tracking the progress of thousands of individual projects worldwide. Status report, James called out as he entered the command center one morning, 51 days into their 3-month window. Anna Wilson looked up from her workstation, dark circles under her eyes. We've launched 412 satellites so far. The first orbital ring is nearly complete. And the power issue? James asked. Tom Reed appeared, carrying a steaming cup of coffee, his 5th of the day. Solved, mostly. The fusion boosters are working. Each satellite can now generate 3 times the energy we initially calculated. What about the Concord observers? James lowered his voice. Anna grimaced. Still watching. They've positioned 4 monitoring vessels in high orbit. They're tracking our satellite launches. Let them watch, Tom said with a tired smile. They're looking for ships. They don't understand what we're building. A young technician rushed up to them. Sir, the test of the Australia sector is ready. They hurried to the main control room, where representatives from dozens of nations had gathered. On the massive central screen, a map showed a section of Australia's outback glowing blue. We've activated 50 satellites positioned over the test zone, Anna explained to the assembled officials. If this works, they'll create a localized shield effect, covering approximately 1,000 square kilometers. And if it doesn't work? Asked the Australian Prime Minister. Tom's expression was grim. Then we need to reconsider our approach. Fast. Anna initiated the countdown. Shield activation in 3, 2, 1. On the screen, the blue area pulsed once, then stabilized. Data streams poured in from monitoring stations. Energy field holding steady, called out a technician. Gravity lens distortion at optimal levels. Begin the test, James ordered. On another screen, they watched as fighter jets approached the shield area. They fired missiles at the protected zone. As each missile hit the invisible barrier, it seemed to slow, then stop completely, hanging in midair before gently dropping to the ground. A cheer erupted in the control room. "It's working," Anna exclaimed, grabbing Tom's arm. "The gravity distortion is functioning exactly as predicted." "Don't celebrate yet," Tom cautioned, though he was smiling. "This is just one small section. We need global coverage, and we're nowhere close to finished." James addressed the gathered officials. "You've seen what we can do. Now we need to triple our efforts. Every nation needs to increase production of the satellites. Every launch facility on Earth needs to be operating 24/7. The resources required are enormous," said the German Chancellor. "We're already stretching our economies to the breaking point." "It's still less than what the Concorde demanded," James replied firmly. "And when we're done, we'll own our defense system. We won't be paying tribute to alien protectors for generations." That convinced them. In the days that followed, the global effort intensified. Factories around the world converted to satellite production. Rockets launched hourly from sites on every continent. Children watched the night sky fill with new stars, the growing constellation of humanity's shield. In orbit, the Concorde observation vessels monitored this activity with increasing confusion. "They continue to launch small satellites," reported the alien observer to Admiral Dorax. "Over 800 now. But no defensive vessels. No weapons platforms, just a network of simple communication devices." Admiral Dorax studied the reports with his 4 eyes narrowed. "These are not simple communication devices. They're too numerous, too precisely positioned." "What else could they be?" asked his second-in-command. "They have no offensive capabilities we can detect." "I don't know," Dorax admitted. "But the humans are executing a coordinated global plan. We should inform the Concorde Council." Back on Earth, progress continued at a frantic pace. The satellite network grew day by day, but problems arose as well. "We're behind schedule in the Pacific sector," Anna reported during a late-night meeting, 70 days into their countdown. "Launch facilities in that region are overtaxed." James studied the global map. "Redirect launches from South America to cover the gap. We can't have holes in the network." "There's another problem," Tom added grimly. "The power draw is higher than we calculated. When we activate the full shield, we might experience global power outages." "For how long?" James asked. "Minutes, maybe hours. We can't be sure." James thought for a moment. "Warn all nations to prepare backup systems for critical infrastructure. Hospitals, communications, military facilities. We'll have to weather the blackout until the system stabilizes." As the deadline approached, tension mounted. With just 1 week remaining before the Concorde's return, the satellite network was nearly complete. Over 3,000 devices positioned in precise orbital patterns around Earth. But they had yet to test the full system. "We only get one chance at this," James told the emergency session of the UN Security Council. "When the Concorde returns, they'll expect to see our answer. If we activate the shield too early, they might attack before it's stable. Too late, and they'll think we're rejecting their protection." "Can we be certain it will work?" asked the Secretary General. James looked at Tom and Anna, who exchanged glances. "No," Tom answered honestly. "The math works. The small-scale tests worked. But a planetary shield has never been attempted before. There are variables we can't predict. What we can promise," Anna added, "is that it's our best chance. If we surrender to the Concorde, we lose our autonomy forever. This way, we control our own fate." The Council voted unanimously to proceed. On the final day before the Concorde's scheduled return, Earth made its preparations. Hospitals switched to backup power. Military forces went on high alert, and in the SHIELD Command Center, James, Tom, and Anna made their final checks. "All satellites report ready," Anna confirmed, her voice tense. Network integrity at 98.7%. Tom looked up from his calculations. It's as good as it's going to get. The remaining gaps are small enough that the field should bridge them. James took a deep breath and looked at the countdown clock. 12 hours until the Concorde's return. Begin the activation sequence, he ordered. Let's show the galaxy what humans can do. In orbit, Admiral Dorax's flagship appeared with perfect timing, accompanied by a fleet of 12 massive warships. As they approached Earth, the Admiral observed the planet with growing confusion. Where are their defenses? He asked. I see no fleet, no orbital weapons platforms, just this strange network of satellites. His tactical officer suddenly straightened. Admiral, we're detecting unusual energy readings from those satellites. There. A ripple of blue light spread across Earth's atmosphere, starting at the North Pole and racing toward the equator. As the Concorde fleet watched in astonishment, the entire planet seemed to shimmer for a moment before being enveloped in a translucent, iridescent shell. What is this? Dorax whispered, his fins extended in surprise. What have they done? Admiral Dorax stared at the shimmering blue field surrounding Earth, his fins twitching with confusion and alarm. Around him, the Concorde fleet hung in space, 12 massive warships built to protect planets from the most dangerous threat in the galaxy. Yet now, they faced something entirely unexpected. Analysis, Dorax demanded, his voice sharp. His science officer worked frantically at the control panel. It appears to be some kind of energy field generated by their satellite network. The field is distorting space-time around the planet. Can our weapons penetrate it? The tactical officer ran simulations. Unknown, Admiral. We have no record of this technology in our database. Dorax's second-in-command leaned closer. Should we consider this a hostile action? They've created a barrier without Concorde approval. The Admiral was silent for a moment, studying the blue sphere that Earth had become. No, this is interesting. Open a communication channel. On Earth, in the SHIELD command center, alarms sounded as the Concorde fleet appeared in orbit. SHIELD holding at 94% capacity, Anna reported, her fingers flying over the controls. Power drain is significant, but within acceptable parameters. Global blackouts reported across non-essential systems, added a technician. Emergency backups functioning as planned. James Miller stood before the main screen, watching the alien ships. They're not attacking. That's something. The communication system chimed. Incoming transmission from the Concorde flagship. Put it through, James ordered. Admiral Dorax's face appeared on the screen, his expression unreadable to human eyes. James Miller, the Admiral said evenly. It seems Earth has been productive during our absence. James straightened his shoulders. Admiral Dorax, welcome back. As you can see, we've developed our own approach to planetary defense. So I observe, Dorax replied. An unusual solution. The Concorde records show no similar defensive system in the known galaxy. We're creative that way, James said with a small smile. Indeed. The Admiral's fins rippled slightly. However, this barrier remains untested against actual threats. The Concorde offer of protection still stands. Before James could respond, another alarm blared through the command center. Multiple jump signatures detected, shouted the sensor operator. Large vessels appearing at the edge of the solar system. The screen split to show a new image, a swarm of dark, insect-like ships emerging from what looked like tears in space. There were hundreds of them, perhaps thousands. The void swarm, Anna whispered, her face pale. They're early. Admiral Dorax's image showed he was receiving the same information. It seems the Concorde intelligence was incorrect about the swarm's timeline. They are here now. On the screen, the swarm of ships began moving toward Earth with frightening speed. Your shield is untested. Dorax continued urgently. Allow the Concorde fleet to take defensive positions. This is no longer a negotiation. It is survival. James looked at Tom and Anna, then at the approaching swarm. Making a decision, he turned back to the screen. "Admiral, we welcome the Concorde's assistance, but we will rely on our shield as the primary defense. Position your vessels behind our protective barrier." Dorax's eyes widened. "You expect us to trust an untested defense system." "We do," James replied firmly, "and we're about to show you why." The Admiral hesitated, then nodded sharply. "Very well. The Concorde fleet will hold position and observe, but we stand ready to engage if your shield fails." As the communication ended, Tom moved next to James. "Bold move. Let's hope it works." "Activate secondary systems," James ordered. "Prepare drone deployment." Throughout the 3 months of building the shield, humanity had been working on another secret project. Hidden in underground facilities and abandoned mines, they had constructed thousands of small, unmanned vessels, each no bigger than a car, but powered by the same gravity lens technology as the shield. "Drone swarm ready for deployment," reported the military coordinator. "Launch bays opening worldwide." On screens around the room, they watched as the void swarm approached, a dark cloud against the stars, moving with singular purpose toward the resource-rich planet. "They're testing the shield," Anna said, monitoring the energy readings, probing for weaknesses. The first void swarm ships reached the blue barrier and immediately fired energy weapons. The shield rippled but held, absorbing the attacks. "Shield integrity holding at 91%. Anna reported. "The gravity distortion is working. Their weapons are being dissipated." More and more swarm ships arrived, concentrating their fire on different sections of the shield. The blue barrier flickered in spots but continued to hold. "They're surrounding the planet," Tom observed. "Looking for a weak point." James nodded grimly. "Time to show them our second surprise. Launch the drones." Across Earth, hidden bay doors opened in mountains, deserts, and beneath the oceans. Thousands of small, sleek vessels rose into the sky, punching through the shield via carefully calculated exit points. In orbit, Admiral Dorax watched in astonishment as Earth seemed to sprout its own swarm, thousands of tiny ships emerging from the planet's surface. "What are those?" his tactical officer asked in amazement. "I believe," Dorax said slowly, "that Earth has a fleet after all." The human drones engaged the void swarm with devastating efficiency. Unlike conventional vessels, they used miniaturized gravity lens technology to create localized distortions in space. Enemy ships found themselves suddenly slowed, their weapons firing at targets that seemed to shift position instantly. "Drone performance exceeding expectations," reported the military coordinator. "Swarm ships unable to compensate for the gravity shifts." On the main screen, they watched as the human drones darted between the larger enemy vessels. The void swarm, accustomed to overwhelming planets with sheer numbers, found itself outmaneuvered. "They're retreating from Sector 7, Anna called out. "The drones are herding them away from the shield weak points." Hour after hour, the battle continued. The shield flickered but held. The drones, coordinated by Earth's combined military AI systems, adapted to each swarm tactic. When a drone was destroyed, 2 more took its place. Finally, after nearly 10 hours of continuous fighting, the void swarm began to withdraw. Ship after ship jumped away until only scattered remnants remained, quickly mopped up by the drone forces. In the shield command center, exhausted staff looked at each other in disbelief. "We did it," Tom said quietly. "The shield held, and the drones performed beyond all projections," Anna added, checking the final statistics. "We lost only 22% of our forces." James allowed himself a smile. Now for the diplomatic part. Admiral Dorax requested permission to enter Earth's atmosphere with a small delegation. The meeting took place in the same United Nations hall where the Concorde had delivered their ultimatum 3 months earlier, but the atmosphere could not have been more different. "The Concorde Council extends its congratulations to Earth," Dorax began, his tone respectful. "Your defense of your world was unprecedented. "Thank you, Admiral," the Secretary General replied. "We hope this demonstrates that Earth is ready to join the galactic community as an equal partner, not as a protectorate." Dorax's fins extended fully, a sign of respect in his species. "More than ready. Your approach to planetary defense has shown innovation that the Concorde has not seen in 1,000 years. The gravity lens technology alone could revolutionize our defensive strategies across the galaxy." "We're open to sharing our technology," James said. "As part of a mutual exchange, of course." "Of course," Dorax agreed. "The Concorde would like to propose a new arrangement, full membership with technology sharing in both directions. No resource tributes, no military occupation, a true alliance." The Secretary General smiled. "That sounds like a much better starting point for negotiations." Later, as the formal meetings continued, James found himself alone with Admiral Dorax in a quiet corner of the building. "I must ask," Dorax said, his voice low, "why did you not tell us what you were building? We might have helped." James looked thoughtful. "Would you have believed us, or would you have seen it as a desperate attempt to avoid your protection?" Dorax's fins rippled in what James now recognized as amusement. "Perhaps you are right. We have grown accustomed to being the protectors. It did not occur to us that protection could take such a different form." "That's the thing about humans," James replied with a smile. "We rarely solve problems the way others expect. You thought we needed a fleet of big ships, but we created something better." "Indeed," Dorax agreed. "And I suspect the galaxy will never be quite the same because of it." As night fell over Geneva, Earth's new satellite constellation glimmered in the sky, thousands of points of light forming a protective net around the planet. Not the fleet the Concorde had expected, but something uniquely human and far more effective than anyone could have imagined. Captain Jack Reed stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force destroyer Resilient, his face hard as stone. Through the main view screen, he watched the blue glow of Neptune grow smaller as his ship retreated. Behind the planet, bright flashes lit up the darkness of space. Each flash meant another human ship was gone. "Captain, the Solarian warships have broken through the Neptune defense line," said Lieutenant Mike Green, his voice shaking. "All EDF ships in Sector 7 are. They're gone, sir." Reed's hands tightened on the railing. 6 months. That's all it had taken for the mighty Solarian Empire to push humanity back to the edge of their own solar system. 6 months of watching good ships and better people die fighting an enemy with technology far beyond their own. "Status report," Reed ordered, keeping his voice steady for the crew. "Not good, sir," said Green, looking down at his console. "The Dauntless and Protector are still fighting, but their shields are failing. The rest of the fleet is." He shook his head. Reed closed his eyes for a moment. The Neptune defense line had been their last real chance to stop the Solarian advance. With it broken, Earth lay exposed. "Message from Fleet Command, sir," called out Communications Officer Lisa Jones. "All remaining ships are ordered to fall back to Earth orbit. They're saying this is our final stand." Reed looked around the bridge. His crew was tired, faces marked by too many battles and too little sleep, but they were still ready to fight, still ready to die for Earth if needed. "Set course for Earth," he ordered. "Maximum speed." The war room inside Earth Defense Headquarters was silent as the holographic display showed the approaching Solarian fleet. President Anna Wilson stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her face showing none of the fear she felt inside. "How many ships do we have left?" she asked. Admiral Frank Johnson, Supreme Commander of Earth's military, looked up from his datapad. 47 combat-ready vessels, Madam President, against their 300. Someone whispered a curse. Wilson ignored it. "And our planetary defenses. Operating at 60% capacity, the orbital platforms took heavy damage in the last attack." Wilson nodded slowly. 6 months ago, humanity had been expanding peacefully through their solar system, establishing colonies on Mars and mining operations in the asteroid belt. Then the Solarian Empire had arrived with their massive ships and energy weapons that cut through Earth's best defenses like they were paper. "Admiral Tom Davis has requested to speak with you, Madam President," said an aide. "He says it's urgent." Wilson nodded, and Davis' face appeared on a nearby screen. His uniform was dirty, and a bandage covered one side of his face. "Madam President," he said, bowing his head slightly, "I need authorization to enact Protocol Omega." The room went silent. Protocol Omega was the last resort contingency plan, designed for a scenario they had hoped would never come. Wilson hesitated only briefly. "Authorization granted, Admiral. May God be with you." Davis nodded grimly. "And with all of us." The screen went dark. Wilson turned back to the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, we need to discuss terms of surrender." Reed stood on the bridge of the Resilient as they entered Earth orbit. The planet looked peaceful from space, blue and white and perfect. You couldn't see the cities damaged by Solarian strikes. You couldn't see the people living in fear. "Captain," said Jones, "incoming transmission from the Solarian flagship. It's Admiral Grant himself." Reed straightened his uniform. On screen, the image of a tall, silver-skinned being appeared. Admiral Grant of the Solarian Empire looked almost human, except for his metallic skin and eyes that glowed with an inner light. "Captain Reed," said Grant, his voice smooth and emotionless, "I have just finished discussing terms with your President Wilson. Earth has surrendered. You will power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded." Reed's face burned with anger and shame. "And if we refuse?" Grant's expression didn't change. "Then I will target major population centers on your planet. I believe I would start with the city you call London. There are 11 million humans there, correct?" Reed felt the eyes of his crew on him. He thought about fighting, about going down in a blaze of glory. But what would that accomplish except the deaths of millions of innocents? "We will comply," he said through gritted teeth. Grant nodded. "A wise decision. The Solarian Empire now claims this system and all its resources. Your people will be allowed to live under our guidance. Resistance will not be tolerated." The screen went dark. "Orders, sir?" asked Green quietly. Reed took a deep breath. "Power down weapons. Prepare to be boarded." 2 weeks later, Reed stood in a crowd of Earth military officers, watching as President Wilson signed the formal surrender document. The ceremony was being broadcast across Earth and throughout the Solarian Empire. Admiral Grant stood nearby, looking pleased in his cold alien way. "With this signing," Grant announced, "the human race officially becomes part of the Solarian Empire. Your military forces are disbanded. Your ships now belong to us. You will find that life under Solarian rule can be comfortable so long as you obey." Reed noticed something strange. Admiral Davis was not present. None of the officers from the carrier Defiance were there. As if reading his thoughts, Grant spoke again. "We are aware that one of your vessels, the carrier Defiance, fled during the final battle. Let me assure you, this ship will be found and destroyed. Such futile gestures of defiance will not be tolerated." After the ceremony, Reed found himself alone with President Wilson for a brief moment. "Is it true," he whispered, "about the Defiance?" Wilson's eyes darted around before she leaned closer. "Protocol Omega is in effect," she whispered back. "Admiral Davis is doing exactly what he's supposed to do." Before Reed could ask more, Solarian guards approached, and Wilson was escorted away. That night, as Reed looked up at the stars from his apartment window, he thought about Protocol Omega. Most officers believed it was just a last-ditch evacuation plan, a way to save a handful of important people if Earth fell. But Reed had once heard rumors that it was something more, something that might give humanity a second chance, even if the worst happened. For the first time since the Neptune defense line fell, Reed felt a tiny spark of hope. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of Solarian sensors, Admiral Davis and the Defiants were carrying that hope with them. 3 years passed under Solarian rule. Earth had changed. Tall, silver buildings now stood in major cities. Solarian ships filled the skies. Humans worked under the watchful eyes of their new masters. Jack Reed wiped sweat from his forehead as he tightened a bolt on the engine of a Solarian patrol ship. His old captain's uniform was gone, replaced by gray work clothes with a number stamped on the chest. 47,291. Just another human worker in the Mars shipyard. Finish up. 47,291. Inspection in 10 minutes, said a Solarian overseer, his metallic skin gleaming under the harsh lights. Yes, sir, Reed replied, keeping his eyes down. He had learned that looking a Solarian in the eye could earn you a day without food. As soon as the overseer walked away, Reed quickly placed a tiny device inside the engine housing. It looked like a normal part, but it was actually a scanner that would record the ship's communication frequencies. Another small victory for the Resistance. Later that night, Reed entered his small living pod. These tiny rooms housed most workers at the shipyard. Once inside, he locked the door and moved his bed to reveal a small hole in the floor. From it, he pulled out an old-style radio. "Sparrow to Nest," he whispered into it. "Package delivered. Over." The radio crackled. "Nest to Sparrow. Good work. Any news on the big move?" "Over." Reed frowned. "They're speeding up the schedule. First transports leave in 2 weeks, not 4. Over." "Understood. Stay safe. Nest out." Reed hid the radio again and sat on his bed, thinking about the big move. The Solarians had announced they would relocate millions of humans to mining colonies on distant planets. Officially, it was called an opportunity. In reality, it was a death sentence of hard labor in terrible conditions. Time was running out. On Earth, former President Anna Wilson sat in her office in the Human Governance Center. The Solarians had kept her as a figurehead, a puppet leader who signed their orders and told humans to obey. Most people thought she had given up, sold out to save herself. They were wrong. Wilson looked up as her Solarian assistant entered. "Governor Wilson, Admiral Grant wishes to see you." Wilson nodded and followed the assistant to a large meeting room. Admiral Grant stood by the window, looking out at what had once been Washington, D.C. "Governor Wilson," he said without turning, "the first relocation ships are ready. I want you to make a speech encouraging humans to embrace this new opportunity." Wilson kept her face blank. "Of course, Admiral. I've already prepared some remarks." "Good. The relocations are essential to the Empire. We need workers for the new mining operations." Grant finally turned to look at her. "There have been whispers of resistance. People saying they will fight the relocations. You will tell them such actions are futile." "I will make that very clear," Wilson said. After Grant left, Wilson returned to her office and pressed a hidden button under her desk. A small section of wall slid open. Inside the hidden space was a young woman with short brown hair. "Did you hear?" Wilson asked. The woman nodded. 2 weeks until the first ships leave. We need to move faster. Can you get a message to Davis?" "Yes. Our next cargo ship leaves tomorrow, with the usual supplies for the Solarian outpost on Europa. The message will be hidden inside." Wilson handed her a small data chip. "Tell him we can't wait any longer. Whatever he's planning, it needs to happen now." Far beyond the edges of the solar system, hidden in the dust clouds of a small, unnamed nebula, Admiral Tom Davis stood on the bridge of the carrier Defiance. But the ship no longer looked like a human vessel. Its hull had been rebuilt and expanded over the past 3 years. And it wasn't alone. Through the view screen, Davis could see dozens of ships of various sizes. Some were clearly built from pieces of old Earth vessels. Others were entirely new designs. All of them were being worked on by teams of engineers and technicians. "Admiral," said Commander Bill Taylor, approaching with a data pad. "Latest production numbers from the asteroid facilities. We've completed 15 more fighters, And 2 cruisers this month. Davis nodded, taking the pad. And the new weapon systems. The EMP cannons are installed on all major ships. The drone swarms are at 90% capacity. Taylor lowered his voice. The gravity well generators are still giving us problems, but Dr. Miller thinks she's close to a breakthrough. Davis walked to a large holographic map showing the Solarian Empire. Red dots marked major military bases. Blue lines showed patrol routes, all information gathered piece by piece through the resistance network. And are people inside the system? Davis asked. Still in place. We just got a message from Earth. Wilson says the Solarians are starting their relocations in 2 weeks. Davis's face hardened. Then we have 2 weeks to be ready. He turned to face Taylor. Send the alert to all our hidden bases. It's time to bring the ships together. Back at the Mars shipyard, Reed was finishing his shift when alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Solarian guards began running toward the landing pads. What's happening? Reed asked another worker. Don't know, the man replied, but they look scared. A moment later, a Solarian patrol ship landed urgently. Officers rushed out, shouting orders. Reed moved closer, pretending to clean a nearby engine part while listening. Attacked 3 outposts in the Kuiper Belt. One officer was saying, no survivors, no warning. Impossible, said another. Who would dare attack the Empire? Unknown ships. No identification signals. They hit hard and vanished. Reed felt his heart beat faster. Could it be? After 3 long years. That night, the Resistance radio network was buzzing with rumors. Reed listened intently. Nest to all birds. Confirmation of strikes against Solarian outposts. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Protocol Omega is active. Reed closed his eyes, feeling a mix of hope and fear. Protocol Omega, the last resort plan that few knew about. Before the war, when Earth first detected signs of the approaching Solarian fleet, Admiral Davis had proposed a radical contingency plan. If Earth fell, they would need a way to fight back. Secret shipyards were built in distant asteroid belts. Key scientists and engineers were quietly given secondary assignments. Resources were hidden away. Even most of Earth's military hadn't known about it. It was too important to risk the information leaking. And now, those hidden resources were finally being used. Reed looked out his small window at the red Martian sky, where Solarian ships were scrambling in obvious confusion. They thought they won, he whispered to himself. They never even looked for our hidden fleet. His communicator beeped with an encrypted message. Get ready. Extraction in 48 hours. The resistance was about to become a revolution. Move now, Reed whispered urgently. He and 4 other resistance members ran across the dark landing pad. Above them, the red Martian sky was filled with stars and the occasional flash of a Solarian patrol ship. Their target sat 50 meters away, a small Solarian scout ship. Guards change in 3 minutes, said Jane Miller, a former Earth Defense Force pilot. We need to be inside by then. Reed nodded. The plan was simple but dangerous. Steal a Solarian ship and escape the solar system to find Admiral Davis and the hidden fleet. If they failed, they would face public execution. They reached the ship and Reed quickly placed his hand on the security panel. The device strapped to his wrist bypassed the Solarian security system, a gift from the Resistance's tech experts who had been studying Solarian technology for years. The door slid open. We're in. Move. The small team rushed inside the ship. Jane immediately went to the pilot's seat while Reed and the others secured the entry points. I need 2 minutes to override the startup sequence, Jane said, her fingers flying over the alien controls. Keep watch. Reed looked through a small viewport. On the other side of the landing pad, 2 Solarian guards were talking. They hadn't noticed anything yet. Hurry, he urged. Almost there. Got it, Jane said. The ship hummed to life. Just then, one of the guards looked their way. His eyes widened, and he reached for his weapon. They'd spotted us. "Take off now," Reed shouted. The ship lurched upward as Jane fired the engines at full power. Alarm sirens began to blare across the shipyard. "Hang on," Jane called as she pushed the engines beyond safe limits. The small scout ship shot upward through the Martian atmosphere. "Patrol ships launching," said Mark, another team member, watching the sensors. 4 of them, coming fast. Reed strapped himself into the co-pilot's seat. "Can we outrun them?" Jane's face was tight with concentration. "Not in atmosphere, but once we hit space, I can activate the jump drive." The ship shook as energy blasts from the patrol ships passed close by. One grazed their hull, making the lights flicker. "Target the ship's engines, but do not destroy it," came a Solarian voice over the communication system. "The humans must be captured alive." "Not happening," Jane muttered. The ship broke through Mars' atmosphere into open space, charging jump drive. "Need 30 seconds." A blast hit their rear section, sending sparks flying from a control panel. "Hull breach in aft section," Mark reported. "Sealing now." 10 seconds to jump, Jane said. Another hit rocked the ship. 5 seconds. Reed could see the Solarian ships closing in through the view screen. "Jump now." The stars stretched into lines as the ship leaked into faster-than-light travel. The Solarian ships vanished behind them. For 2 weeks, they traveled in stolen ship, making short jumps between systems to avoid detection. Their destination was a set of coordinates Reed had memorized years ago during a secret briefing about Protocol Omega. "Jump complete," Jane announced as they arrived in an unnamed star system far from Earth. "This is the place, but I don't see anything." Reed looked at the empty space around them. According to his information, this should be the location of Sanctuary, the main base of the hidden fleet. "Maybe we're too late," Mark suggested. "Maybe they've already left." Reed shook his head. "No, they're here." He opened a communication channel and transmitted a specific sequence of tones, the Protocol Omega recognition signal. For a long minute, nothing happened. Then suddenly, their sensors lit up with warnings. "Multiple ships decloaking all around us," Jane exclaimed. Reed smiled as the space around them seemed to shimmer. Where there had been nothing, now dozens of ships appeared. Some he recognized as modified Earth vessels. Others were new designs he had never seen before. A communication request flashed on their console. Reed accepted it. Admiral Davis's face appeared on the screen. He looked older, with more gray in his hair and new lines on his face, but his eyes were still sharp and determined. "Captain Reed," he said with a small smile. "Took you long enough to join us." "Welcome to Sanctuary," Admiral Davis said as he led Reed and his team through a massive space station hidden inside a dense nebula cloud. Reed stared in amazement. The station was huge, with docking bays holding ships of all sizes. Thousands of people worked throughout the facility, building, repairing, and preparing for war. "How?" Reed asked. "How did you create all this in just 3 years?" Davis gestured around them. Protocol Omega wasn't just a plan. It was already in motion before the Solarians arrived. We had small outposts and manufacturing facilities hidden throughout neighboring star systems. When Earth fell, we activated everything and started building. They entered a large command center where a holographic map showed the entire Solarian Empire. "This is what we're up against," Davis said. "The Solarian Empire controls over 300 star systems. They have thousands of ships and millions of soldiers." Reed felt a moment of doubt. "And how many ships do we have?" Davis smiled grimly. 342 combat vessels, plus support ships. Not as many as them, but we have advantages they don't expect. He pointed to a different display showing unusual ship designs. "Our scientists have been studying Solarian technology. We've created weapons specifically designed to target their weaknesses. EMP weapons that can shut down their electronic systems, Chrome swarms that can overwhelm their defenses, and our newest creation, gravity well generators that can trap their ships and prevent them from jumping to light speed. Reed looked at the displayed weapons with growing hope. The Solarians think humans are primitive, Davis continued. They believe we're only good as slaves. They never bothered to hide their technology from us, because they thought we couldn't understand it. That was their biggest mistake. He turned to face Reed directly. The time has come to show them exactly what humans can do when pushed too far. I'm putting you in command of the destroyer Vengeance. It's one of our newest ships. Reed straightened his back. What's the plan, Admiral? First, we start hitting their outposts and supply lines. Make them chase shadows. Then, when they're confused and spread thin, we strike at their main fleet. Davis's eyes hardened. The Solarians thought they won 3 years ago. It's time to show them how wrong they were. 2 days later, Reed stood on the bridge of the Vengeance. The ship was smaller than traditional destroyers, but packed with new weapons and technology. His crew was a mix of original Earth Defense Force personnel and new recruits trained at Sanctuary. Through the view screen, Reed could see hundreds of ships gathering. The hidden fleet was coming together for the first time, preparing to launch their full-scale counterattack. All systems ready, Captain, reported his first officer. Reed nodded, feeling the surge of determination. The storm is gathering, he said quietly, and the Solarians have no idea what's coming for them. Enemy outpost in range, Captain, reported Jane Miller, now serving as weapons officer on the Vengeance. Reed nodded, studying the Solarian supply station on his display. The station orbited a small moon in a system far from Earth, but it was important. From here, the Solarians distributed resources to a dozen of their frontier worlds. All ships, attack pattern Delta, Reed ordered. Remember, hit hard and fast. We need to be gone before reinforcements arrive. This was the 5th raid his battle group had conducted in the past week. Admiral Davis had split the human fleet into small, fast-moving groups that struck Solarian targets across the Empire and disappeared before the enemy could respond. Target locked, Jane said. EMP missiles ready. Fire. The Vengeance shuddered slightly as it launched 4 missiles toward the Solarian station. The other 5 ships in Reed's group fired as well. The missiles streaked across space, their warheads designed to overload Solarian electronic systems without destroying the station itself. On the view screen, Reed watched the missiles hit. There was no explosion, just a pulse of blue energy that washed over the station. Immediately, the station's lights flickered and went out. Direct hit, Jane reported. Their systems are down. Reed turned to his communications officer. Send the message. The officer nodded and transmitted a short video message to the station. In it, Admiral Davis stood in his uniform, speaking directly to the camera. Attention, Solarian Empire. Your rule is coming to an end. Humanity will not remain enslaved. This is only the beginning. Message sent, Captain. All ships, prepare to jump to the next target, Reed ordered. The small battle group vanished into light speed, leaving behind a disabled station and very confused Solarians. On the Solarian homeworld, Admiral Grant stood before the Imperial Council, his normally confident posture now stiff with tension. Explain these attacks, demanded the Solarian Emperor, his silver skin gleaming in the council chamber's light. Grant bowed. We believe it is a small group of human rebels, Your Majesty. They have attacked 27 outposts and supply stations in the past 2 weeks. A small group, the Emperor asked, his voice dangerously calm. How has a small group managed to disable 27 Imperial facilities? They appear to have developed weapons that specifically target our systems, Grant admitted. And they never stay to fight. They strike and vanish immediately. Another council member leaned forward. And what of this human admiral who appears in their messages? Davis, I believe. Grant's face hardened. Admiral Davis commanded the human carrier that escaped during the conquest of Earth. We believed his ship was destroyed or lost in deep space. It seems we were mistaken. The Emperor stood, towering over the council table. Find these rebels. Crush them. Make an example of them that the entire galaxy will remember." Grant bowed again. "As you command, Your Majesty. I have already recalled our main battle fleet to secure the core systems." As Grant left the council chamber, he tried to hide his worry. These were not the actions of a desperate band of refugees. The attacks were too well coordinated, too effective. Something larger was happening, something he had missed. Back on Earth, former President Wilson sat in her office, reading reports of the attacks with carefully hidden satisfaction. The Solarians were growing nervous. Security had tightened everywhere. The time had come. Wilson pressed a hidden button under her desk, sending a prearranged signal to resistance cells across Earth and its colonies. Within hours, small acts of sabotage began. Power stations failed. Communication networks went down. Solarian patrols found their vehicles suddenly inoperable. Nothing big enough to trigger a massive response, but enough to stretch the Solarians thin, to make them look in all the wrong places. Reed stood in Admiral Davis's command center aboard Sanctuary Station. On the main screen, a map showed the position of the Solarian main battle fleet. "They're doing exactly what we hoped," Davis said. "Grant has pulled their fleet back to protect their core systems." Reed studied the map. "That leaves Earth vulnerable." Davis nodded. "And that's where we'll strike next." He gestured to the assembled ship captains. "The time for small raids is over. We're launching our main attack." He pointed to Jupiter on the map. "The Solarians have established their main Earth defense base on Callisto, Jupiter's outermost large moon. If we take it, we control access to Earth. This is where we reveal our full strength." The room filled with determined voices as Davis outlined the attack plan. When he finished, Reed approached him privately. "Admiral, permission to lead the Special Operation Team," Reed requested. Davis looked at him carefully. "That's the most dangerous part of the mission. You'll have to get inside the Solarian Command Center and disable their early warning network." "I know their systems better than anyone," Reed said. "I spent 3 years working on their ships." After a moment, Davis nodded. "Very well, Captain. The Vengeance will take you in." 3 days later, Reed's ship approached Jupiter using a stolen Solarian identification code. Around him, the human fleet waited in hiding, using the newly developed cloaking technology reverse-engineered from Solarian systems. "We're being hailed," reported his communications officer. Reed took a deep breath. "Put them through." A Solarian face appeared on screen. "Identify your vessel and purpose." "Supply ship Radiant, delivering parts to Callisto Base," Reed replied, using the cover story they had prepared. There was a pause while the Solarian checked something. "Your ship is not on our expected arrival list." Reed forced a casual tone. "Check again. We were rerouted from Europa Station yesterday." "Admiral Grant's orders." The mention of Grant's name worked. The Solarian looked flustered. "1 moment. Yes, I see the order now. Proceed to Docking Bay 4. The screen went dark, and Reed let out a breath. It worked. The Vengeance, disguised as a Solarian supply ship, continued toward Callisto. "All Special Operation Team members, prepare for deployment," Reed ordered as he rose from his command chair. "We have 30 minutes to get inside and disable their warning network." Jane looked up from her station. "Good luck, Captain." Reed nodded. "When the network goes down, that's Davis's signal to bring in the fleet. Let's hope the Solarians enjoy surprises." Reed and his team of 6 moved quietly through the Solarian base on Callisto. Their stolen uniforms and forged identification got them past most checkpoints, but time was running short. "The main control room is ahead," whispered Mark, checking a stolen map. "Heavy security." Reed peered around a corner. 2 Solarian guards stood at the entrance to the control room. "We need a distraction," he said. As if in answer to his words, alarms suddenly blared throughout the base. "Unauthorized chips detected in Sector 7, announced a voice over the station speakers. The guards at the control room door looked at each other, then hurried away toward the disturbance. That's our diversion team right on schedule, Reed said with a smile. Move now. They rushed to the control room door. Reed used his security bypass device to get them inside. The room was large, filled with Solarian officers monitoring screens showing space around Jupiter. Before anyone could react, Reed's team fired stun weapons, dropping the Solarians where they stood. Secure the door, Reed ordered as he moved to the main control panel. I need 2 minutes. He worked quickly, using the knowledge he had gained during his years working in the Solarian shipyard. His fingers flew over the alien controls, shutting down one system after another. Warning network disabled, he announced finally, sending the signal to Davis. On the screens around them, small dots began to appear as the human fleet decloaked. Dozens at first, then hundreds. A Solarian officer who was regaining consciousness looked at the screens in disbelief. Impossible, he whispered. Where did they come from? Reed smiled as he watched the human ships move into attack formation. We were here all along, he said. You just never bothered to look. The space around Jupiter erupted in battle. Hundreds of human ships faced off against the surprised Solarian defenders. Energy beams cut through the darkness of space. Explosions bloomed like silent, deadly flowers. Reed and his team fought their way back to the Vengeance, which waited at a maintenance dock. Alarms blared throughout the Callisto base as Solarians realized they were under a full-scale attack. Get us out of here, Reed ordered as he reached the bridge. Join the main attack force. The Vengeance broke away from the base, engines flaring. Through the view screen, Reed could see the massive battle unfolding. Human ships moved in perfect coordination, using tactics that confused the Solarians. Admiral Davis is hailing all ships, Jane reported from her station. Davis's face appeared on the screen. The surprise worked. Their early warning system is down, and they can't call for reinforcements. Now we press the advantage. All ships, execute Battle Plan Omega. The human fleet split into 3 groups. One continued to engage the Solarian ships near Callisto. Another moved to secure the other Jovian moons. The third, led by Admiral Davis in the Defiance, pushed toward Earth. Reed's ship joined Davis's group. As they moved away from Jupiter, Reed could see the new human weapons in action. Swarms of small, unmanned drones surrounded Solarian cruisers, overwhelming their defenses. EMP weapons shut down Solarian systems, leaving ships drifting and helpless. Most impressive were the gravity well generators. When activated, they created distortions in space that prevented Solarian ships from jumping to light speed, trapping them in normal space where they could be engaged. They never expected us to have this technology, Reed said, watching a Solarian battleship struggle against a gravity well. They thought we were too primitive. Their mistake, Jane replied with a grim smile. A massive explosion lit up space behind them as one of the main Solarian defense platforms fell. Captain, called his communications officer. Incoming transmission from Earth. It's President Wilson. Wilson's face appeared on screen. She looked tired but determined. Captain Reed, the resistance has begun. We've taken control of major communication centers in Asia and North America. The Solarians are in chaos. We'll be there soon, Madam President, Reed promised. Hold on. Admiral Grant stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Imperial Might, as it orbited Earth. His silver face showed rare emotion, anger, and disbelief. How did they build such a fleet without our knowledge? He demanded of his officers. How did they develop these weapons? No one had answers. Reports flooded in from all over the solar system. Human ships attacking everywhere. Resistance fighters rising up on Earth and Mars. Solarian forces in disarray. Admiral, said his second-in-command, the main human fleet has broken through our Jupiter defenses. They will reach Earth within hours. Grant's eyes narrowed. Prepare all ships. We will meet them and crush them. And order orbital bombardment of major Earth cities. Show these humans the cost of rebellion. His officer hesitated. Sir, that would kill millions, including our own personnel. Do it. Grant shouted. "I will not lose this system." In orbit around Earth, massive Solarian warships began to move into bombardment positions. On the ground, humans watched the sky in fear, seeing the ships through breaks in the clouds. Then new ships appeared, human ships, emerging from lightspeed jumps. The Defiance led the fleet, with the Vengeance and dozens of other warships following close behind. "All ships, protect Earth," Admiral Davis ordered. "Stop those bombardment vessels at all costs." The space around Earth became a battlefield. Human and Solarian ships clashed in the largest space battle humanity had ever seen. On the Vengeance, Reed watched as a Solarian ship targeted London. "Target their main weapons," he ordered. "Fire everything we have." The Vengeance unleashed a barrage of missiles and energy weapons. The Solarian ship's shields flickered, then failed. A follow-up shot disabled its weapons. All across Earth's orbit, similar scenes played out. Human ships fought with desperate courage, knowing everything was at stake. On the ground, President Wilson led a team of resistance fighters into the main Solarian control center in what had once been New York. After a brief firefight, they secured the facility. "Cut off their communication with the fleet," Wilson ordered, "and get me a channel to all Earth broadcasting systems." Minutes later, her face appeared on screens worldwide. "People of Earth, this is President Wilson. Today we fight for our freedom. The hidden fleet has returned, and we are taking back our world. Rise up. The time is now." Across the planet, millions of humans answered the call. They overwhelmed Solarian positions through sheer numbers. The occupiers, cut off from orbital support and surrounded by hostile populations, began to surrender. In space, Admiral Grant's flagship, the Imperial Might, was the largest vessel in the battle. Its weapons tore through several human ships, threatening to turn the tide. "We need to take out Grant's ship," Admiral Davis said over the fleet communication. "It's the key to their command structure." Reed looked at his tactical display. "The Vengeance is in position. We can make a run at it." "Too risky," Davis replied. "Their firepower will tear you apart." "We have to try," Reed insisted. "We'll use the gravity well generator to trap them, then hit them with everything we have." After a moment, Davis nodded. "Do it. We'll provide covering fire." The Vengeance broke from the main formation, diving toward Grant's massive flagship. Solarian weapons fire streaked past them, some hitting and shaking the ship violently. "Gravity well generator at full power," Jane reported. "Ready on your mark." "Activate," Reed ordered. Space distorted around the Solarian flagship. The massive ship suddenly slowed, caught in the artificial gravity well. "They're trapped," Reed said. "All weapons, fire." The Vengeance unleashed everything it had, joined by several other human ships. The Solarian flagship's shields began to fail under the assault. On the bridge of the Imperial Might, Admiral Grant watched in disbelief as his ship's systems failed one by one. "Impossible," he whispered. "They were primitives. How could they do this?" An explosion rocked the ship, throwing him to the floor. Warning lights flashed everywhere. "Admiral," called his second-in-command, "we've lost engines and weapons. Life support is failing." Grant stood slowly, straightening his uniform. "Prepare my shuttle." Reed watched as a small shuttle launched from the crippled Solarian flagship. "It's Grant," he said, recognizing the shuttle's signature. "He's running." "Should we pursue?" Jane asked. Reed considered for a moment, then shook his head. "No, let him go. Let him tell the Solarians what happened here today." Around them, the battle was ending. With Grant's flagship disabled and Earth's surface largely in human hands, Solarian forces began to retreat or surrender. Admiral Davis's voice came over the fleet channel. "All ships, stand down from combat operations. The Earth is secure. I repeat, Earth is secure." Cheers erupted across the bridge of the Vengeance. Reed looked out at his home planet, now free after 3 long years. 1 month later, Reed stood in the rebuilt United Nations building in New York. President Wilson addressed the delegates from Earth and its colonies. "Today we offer peace to the Solarian Empire," she said, "not as subjects, but as equals. The war has proven that humanity will not be conquered. We ask only for our independence and the right to determine our own future." The Solarian representative, not Grant but a lower-ranking diplomat, looked uncomfortable. "The Empire is willing to discuss terms." Reed smiled slightly. The Solarians' carefully constructed image of invincibility had been shattered. Their defeat at Earth had sent shockwaves through their empire. Already, reports indicated that other subjugated species were beginning to resist. As the meeting continued, Reed slipped outside to a balcony overlooking the city. Admiral Davis joined him there. "Thinking about what's next?" Davis asked. Reed nodded, looking up at the stars. "There are other worlds out there under Solarian control. Other people who need help." Davis smiled. "I was thinking the same thing. The Vengeance is being refitted. She'll be ready in a week, interested in a new mission." Reed extended his hand. "Always, Admiral." As they shook hands, Reed knew that this was just the beginning. Humanity had faced extinction and survived. They had built a hidden fleet and won their freedom. Now they would help others do the same. The Empire thought it had won. They never saw the hidden fleet coming, and they would never make that mistake again.